What if I told you that the frozen landscapes of the Ice Age didn't just shape the planet but also left their mark on your DNA? Think about it. Beneath the surface of who we are today lies a legacy, one forged tens of thousands of years ago when our ancestors battled extreme climates, navigated frozen terrains, and faced challenges we can barely imagine. Imagine a world covered in ice, where glaciers stretched for miles, and survival meant adapting or disappearing forever. For humans and animals alike, this was a battle for existence. But here's the twist. What if the struggles of that distant past still linger in our genetic code today, influencing everything from our physical traits to the way we adapt to environmental threats? In today's journey, we're diving deep into the forgotten genetic legacy of the Ice Age, a story of survival, migration, and transformation that spans millennia. We'll uncover how ancient humans navigated this frozen world, what they left behind in our DNA, and why these echoes of the past are more relevant now than ever. From the fascinating Neanderthal genes that shaped our immunity to the genetic bottlenecks that reduce diversity and mold entire populations, we're pulling back the icy veil to reveal the secrets locked in time. And trust me, what we're about to uncover will forever change the way you see the world around you. But here's a question for you. How much of our survival today, our ability to adapt to a changing climate, to overcome challenges, is rooted in what we inherited from the past? Stick around, because by the end of this, you might just find that the Ice Age is closer to you than you ever imagined. To understand the genetic legacy of the Ice Age, we first need to step back into a world that's almost impossible to imagine today. Picture this: massive ice sheets, stretching as far as the eye could see, blanketed much of the northern hemisphere. Glacier towered over landscapes, carving valleys and shaping continents as they moved. Temperatures plunged, and the Earth's climate cycled through periods of intense cold and slightly warmer interludes for nearly 2.5 million years. This was the Pleistocene epoch, a time when nature tested the limits of survival. During the last glacial maximum, around 25,000 years ago, vast portions of Europe, Asia, and North America were locked in ice. Sea levels were over 400 feet lower than today, exposing land bridges like the famous Bering Land Bridge, which connected Siberia to Alaska. These natural highways weren't just geological phenomena, they were lifelines. Humans and animals alike used them to migrate, fleeing uninhabitable regions in search of food, safety, and a chance to survive. But survival wasn't easy. For humans, the challenges were endless. How do you find food in a frozen wasteland? How do you stay warm when fire is your only defense against the biting cold? And how do you protect your community when predators and the elements seem to conspire against you at every turn? Yet, somehow, they adapted. Archaeological evidence reveals how these early humans innovated, crafting sophisticated tools, using animal hides for clothing, and developing hunting strategies that allowed them to take down mammoths and other Ice Age giants. This was survival at its most primal, but it was also a testament to human ingenuity. Meanwhile, these climatic extremes didn't just shape landscapes, they reshaped the very DNA of those who lived through them. Genetic bottlenecks, periods when populations were so small that only a few genes were passed on, left lasting imprints on our genomes. These bottlenecks didn't just reduce genetic diversity, they created unique adaptations that helped certain groups survive the harsh Ice Age environment. And it wasn't just humans evolving. The flora and fauna of the time were also adapting, leading to ecosystems that were starkly different from anything we see today. Woolly mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and giant ground sloths thrived in the Ice Age world, each perfectly adapted to their frozen homes. But perhaps the most fascinating question is this: how did humans survive and even thrive in such an unforgiving world? The answer lies not just in their tools and strategies but in the genetic legacy they left behind. A legacy that continues to influence us today in ways we're only beginning to understand. This was the stage, an icy, unyielding world where only the strongest, smartest, and most adaptable could endure. And as we'll uncover, the genetic lessons learned in this frozen era have rippled through time, shaping the species we've become. Modern DNA analysis has opened a window into the past, revealing secrets that were buried under layers of ice and time. But what exactly does our genetic code say about our Ice Age ancestors? To answer that, scientists have turned to ancient bones, often no larger than a finger or a tooth, and extracted DNA that has endured tens of thousands of years. The results have been nothing short of groundbreaking. One of the most fascinating revelations is that all modern Europeans, and indeed many other populations, can trace parts of their ancestry to a single founder population that emerged between 37,000 and 14,000 years ago. This group wasn't the first modern humans in Europe, but they left the most enduring genetic legacy. Earlier arrivals, like the people of the Aurignacian culture, contributed little to modern populations. Instead, these genetic pioneers were replaced by groups associated with cultures like the Gravettians and Magdalenians, who survived through the harshest periods of the Ice Age. But why do these genetic shifts matter? Because they tell us who survived, and how. The genetic makeup of these early populations reveals a host of traits that were likely advantageous in Ice Age environments. For example, skin pigmentation played a crucial role. The earliest Europeans had darker skin and brown eyes, which were well suited to the sunnier climates their ancestors lived in. However, as they moved northward into areas with less sunlight, lighter skin and blue eyes began to spread. This wasn't just an aesthetic change, it was an adaptation that helped their bodies produce enough vitamin D in environments where sunlight was scarce. And then there's the fascinating story of Neanderthal DNA. When modern humans first encountered Neanderthals in Europe around 45,000 years ago, the two species interbred. As a result, most people outside of Africa today carry between 1% and 2% Neanderthal DNA. But here's the twist. The proportion of Neanderthal ancestry has been shrinking over time. Scientists believe this is due to natural selection, as many Neanderthal gene variants had negative effects on health and were gradually weeded out of our genomes. However, some beneficial Neanderthal traits, such as those linked to immunity, have persisted, giving us an edge against certain diseases. The story doesn't end there. As Ice Age populations adapted to their harsh environments, genetic bottlenecks, the periods when populations dwindled to just a few individuals, shaped their genetic diversity. These bottlenecks were like nature's sieve, allowing only certain genes to pass through to the next generation. This is why genetic diversity in modern Europeans is lower than in populations that remained in Africa during the same period. But perhaps the most intriguing part of this genetic puzzle is what it tells us about migration. DNA evidence shows that after the Ice Age, as the climate began to warm, populations from the Near East migrated into Europe. These groups brought with them not only new genes but also new technologies, including farming. This influx of genetic material helped shape the European gene pool we see today. Every fragment of DNA extracted from Ice Age bones adds another piece to this complex puzzle. These ancient genomes tell a story of survival, adaptation, and resilience, a story written in the very fabric of who we are. They remind us that the challenges faced by our ancestors weren't just physical but also genetic, shaping the traits and abilities that would carry them, and us, into the future. The Ice Age was more than just a time of frozen landscapes. It was an era of relentless survival, where humans had to endure unimaginable climate extremes. From intense cold to brief interludes of warmth, these fluctuations weren't just physical challenges. They were genetic crucibles, shaping who we are today. During this period, survival depended on adaptation, and the effects of those adaptations can still be seen in our genetic code. For example, as vast ice sheets spread across Europe, early human populations were pushed into warmer refuges, such as the Iberian Peninsula, Italy, and the Balkans. These pockets of survival acted like genetic reservoirs, preserving certain traits that would later spread as populations expanded back across the continent when the ice receded. But adaptation wasn't just about surviving the cold. One of the most striking examples is the evolution of skin pigmentation. Early Ice Age humans likely had darker skin, a trait inherited from their African ancestors, which was ideal for protecting against intense ultraviolet radiation. However, as populations moved into regions with less sunlight, this trait became less advantageous. Over time, lighter skin, which allowed for better vitamin D synthesis in low-light environments, began to spread. This wasn't just a slow, random change. It was a rapid adaptation driven by the pressures of a challenging environment. Another fascinating story lies in the genes that helped our ancestors process food. The Ice Age diet was heavily reliant on hunting large game like mammoths and reindeer, as well as foraging for whatever plant life could survive the cold. Genetic adaptations for metabolizing fat and protein efficiently likely emerged during this period. These traits gave Ice Age populations the ability to extract maximum energy from their often scarce food sources, a crucial advantage in a world where starvation was a constant threat. The impact of the Ice Age wasn't limited to physical traits. The extreme conditions also influenced the genes responsible for our immune systems. Living in close-knit groups and facing exposure to pathogens from both humans and animals, early populations developed stronger immune defenses. Interestingly, some of these immune-boosting genes are thought to have come from our Neanderthal ancestors, passed down through interbreeding. These inherited traits may have been the key to withstanding the diseases that thrived in Ice Age environments. As the climate oscillated between freezing cold and brief warm interludes, these genetic changes became imprinted in our DNA. However, they also came with trade-offs. For example, some genetic variants that helped our ancestors survive the Ice Age are linked to modern health issues. Traits like a tendency to store fat, which were life-saving during times of scarcity, are now associated with higher risks of obesity in today's calorie-rich world. Similarly, certain immune system adaptations may contribute to autoimmune disorders. What's truly remarkable is how much we owe to these ancient adaptations. They weren't just about surviving the Ice Age. They were about thriving in it. These genetic changes didn't just shape the bodies of Ice Age humans, they shaped their minds, their behaviors, and ultimately their ability to endure. Today, as we face our own era of climate challenges, the legacy of these adaptations serves as a powerful reminder of human resilience. The ability to adapt, both biologically and culturally, is hardwired into our species. And while the Ice Age has long since ended, its genetic echoes remain with us, a testament to the incredible story of survival written into our DNA. The story of the Ice Age is not just about survival but also about movement, vast migrations that spanned continents and reshaped the genetic landscape of humanity. These migrations were not mere wanderings. They were battles for survival, journeys to escape encroaching glacier, and quests for fertile lands where life could thrive. Imagine early humans in Ice Age Europe, their lives dictated by the expansion and retreat of massive ice sheets. As the glacier advanced, many groups were pushed south into more temperate regions like the Iberian Peninsula, Italy, and the Balkans, areas that served as refuges during the harshest glacial periods. These regions became genetic sanctuaries, preserving the DNA of some of the earliest European populations. But what about the groups that didn't make it? Ice Age Europe also tells a story of extinction. Some populations simply couldn't adapt to the rapidly changing climate or compete with others for scarce resources. Genetic evidence reveals that some early arrivals in Europe left no trace in modern populations. They vanished entirely, their genetic legacy erased, highlighting the brutal realities of life during this epoch. Yet, the Ice Age wasn't just a tale of loss. It was also one of renewal. As the glacier began to retreat around 14,000 years ago, populations that had been confined to refuges started to spread northward, repopulating areas that had been uninhabitable for millennia. These movements weren't just about reclaiming land. They brought with them new genetic combinations, cultures, and technologies that shaped the course of human history. One fascinating example of this revival is the Magdalene ants, a culture that thrived in Europe toward the end of the Ice Age. As the ice retreated, Magdalene ants expanded across the continent, their influence reaching far and wide. Their genetic signature suggests that they were connected to earlier populations that had found refuge in southern Europe, particularly in the Iberian Peninsula. This connection demonstrates the resilience of these ancient groups, who not only survived but flourished in the face of adversity. Then there's the intriguing story of the Villabruna cluster, a genetic group that emerged around 14,000 years ago, coinciding with the first major warming period after the Ice Age. This group's DNA shows clear links to populations from the Near East, suggesting a period of intercontinental migration and genetic exchange. It's a testament to how interconnected human populations became, even in a time when survival often depended on isolation. But these migrations weren't just about humans, they were also about ideas and culture. Archaeological evidence shows that as populations moved and mingled, they shared technologies like advanced tools, clothing, and even symbolic art. This exchange of knowledge was critical for adapting to the changing climate and helped pave the way for the eventual transition to farming and settled life. Yet, not all of these migrations were peaceful. The Ice Age was a time of competition, and as populations moved into new territories, clashes were inevitable. Genetic studies reveal signs of population turnovers, where one group displaced another, leaving behind only fragments of their DNA. This constant flux created a genetic mosaic that's still visible in modern Europeans. What's perhaps most surprising is how these Ice Age migrations still influence us today. For example, the genetic adaptations that helped Ice Age humans survive extreme climates continue to shape traits like metabolism, immunity, and even skin color. The echoes of these migrations can also be found in our cultural and linguistic heritage, as the movement of people often brought with it new ideas and innovations. The Ice Age was a period of immense change, and its migrations reflect the resilience and adaptability of our ancestors. They didn't just survive, they moved, adapted, and thrived, leaving behind a legacy that continues to define us. Their journeys were perilous, their losses profound, but their triumphs remarkable. And as we trace their movements through the map of ancient DNA, we uncover a story that is both humbling and inspiring, a testament to the enduring spirit of humanity. The Ice Ages were not just a trial of survival, they were a crucible of transformation, reshaping the very DNA of humanity. Among the most profound genetic impacts was the occurrence of bottlenecks, events where human populations dwindled to such low numbers that only a fraction of their genetic diversity survived. These bottlenecks are like narrow bridges in our evolutionary journey, moments when the path of humanity was nearly cut off, leaving lasting imprints on our genes. During the harshest periods of the Ice Age, vast swathes of land became uninhabitable. In Europe, glacier advanced southward, covering much of the continent in ice and forcing humans into smaller, isolated refuges. Genetic studies reveal that as populations were confined to these isolated pockets, the amount of genetic diversity they carried drastically shrank. This wasn't just a random loss, it was a reshaping of genetic makeup that influenced survival, adaptability, and even how our species would evolve in the millennia to come. But why is this so significant? Genetic bottlenecks amplify certain traits while suppressing others, not because of natural selection but simply due to chance. Imagine a small group of survivors. The traits and genetic variations they carry become the foundation for future generations, while the genetic diversity lost in the process is gone forever. One striking example of this is found in Neanderthal ancestry. Early modern humans who migrated into Europe around 45,000 years ago interbred with Neanderthals, acquiring a significant portion of their DNA, initially around 3 to 6%. But by the end of the Ice Age, this percentage had dwindled to about 2%. Thanks to a combination of genetic drift and natural selection. Certain Neanderthal genes likely conferred advantages in the cold climates, such as traits related to skin or hair, but many others were weeded out because they posed disadvantages or were simply no longer necessary. Interestingly, these bottlenecks also help explain the emergence of regional traits. For example, traits like lighter skin tones and blue eyes, which are more common in modern Europeans, began to spread after the Ice Age, partly because of genetic isolation and adaptation to lower levels of sunlight in northern climates. The populations that emerged from the bottlenecks carried unique genetic markers that would shape their descendants' physical characteristics and abilities to adapt to their environments. Yet bottlenecks weren't just a European phenomenon. Similar patterns occurred worldwide, shaped by local Ice Age conditions. In Africa, for instance, genetic evidence shows that populations remained more diverse, likely due to the absence of extensive glaciation and the presence of multiple habitable regions. This diversity is one reason why modern humans of African descent carry the richest genetic variation, a legacy of uninterrupted populations that avoided the severe bottlenecks experienced elsewhere. These genetic bottlenecks also had profound effects on human health. For example, some genetic mutations that arose during these periods still affect us today. Mutations linked to immunity, metabolism, and even diseases like diabetes and heart conditions often have roots in Ice Age adaptations. While they may have provided advantages in ancient environments, such as surviving famine or fighting infections, these same traits can become liabilities in modern settings. Another intriguing legacy of these bottlenecks is the genetic clues they provide about ancient migrations. When populations expanded again after the Ice Age, their reduced genetic diversity became a kind of fingerprint, allowing scientists to trace the paths of migration and population mixing. It's how we've come to understand the movements of groups like the Magdalene Ants, Villabruner cluster, and others, each carrying distinct genetic markers from their Ice Age ancestors. But the most compelling part of this story is what bottlenecks reveal about human resilience. Despite repeated cycles of population collapse and recovery, humans didn't just survive, they thrived, adapted, and innovated. These genetic reductions didn't stop us. They refined us, sharpening the edges of our evolutionary toolkit. They remind us that even in the face of immense challenges, humanity has always found a way forward. When we look at our DNA today, we see the echoes of those ancient bottlenecks. Every gene carries a story of survival, a testament to the ingenuity and determination of our ancestors. And while these bottlenecks may have narrowed the paths of evolution, they also paved the way for the incredible diversity and adaptability that defines humanity today. The Ice Ages were not just a battle for survival, they were also the stage for humanity's greatest journeys and cultural transformations. As glacier expanded and retreated over millennia, they didn't just shape the landscapes of continents, they shaped the very movements and behaviors of our ancestors. These migrations weren't random wanderings, they were responses to shifting climates and environments that demanded constant adaptation. Imagine Europe at the peak of the last glacial maximum, about 25,000 years ago. Massive ice sheets blanketed much of the continent, forcing human populations to retreat southward to what scientists now call glacial refugia, warmer, habitable regions in places like the Iberian Peninsula, southern France, and the Balkans. These areas became critical havens, cradles of humanity where people found shelter, food, and the opportunity to regroup. But what's truly remarkable is how these migrations shaped human culture. In these refuges, small, isolated groups developed distinct ways of life, tools, and artistic traditions. For example, the Gravettian culture, known for its iconic Venus figurines, thrived during this period in Europe. These small carvings, often depicting women, are more than just relics. They are glimpses into the symbolic and spiritual world of Ice Age humans, suggesting beliefs in fertility, survival, or perhaps even early forms of storytelling. As the ice sheets began to retreat around 14,000 years ago, these populations ventured back north, reclaiming territories that had been uninhabitable for thousands of years. But they didn't just return as they had been. They carried with them the innovations, cultural practices, and survival strategies they had honed during their time in the refugia. This northward migration also led to the blending of different groups, creating new cultural and genetic lineages that would define the post-Ice Age world. Take, for instance, the Magdalénian culture, which flourished in Western Europe as the Ice Age ended. Known for their intricate cave paintings, such as those in Lascaux, France, these people left a visual legacy that speaks to their deep connection with the animals and environment around them. These paintings weren't just art, they were likely tied to rituals, teaching, or even a form of communication, evidence of an increasingly complex and interconnected human society. But it wasn't just Europe that experienced these monumental shifts. In Asia, the ice created corridors of migration, such as the steppe regions where early humans adapted to life as nomadic hunters. These groups were the ancestors of populations that would eventually spread across Siberia and into the Americas via the Bering Land Bridge, a frozen connection between the continents that existed during the Ice Age. This migration into the Americas, occurring around 15,000 years ago, is one of humanity's most extraordinary achievements. Crossing an icy and barren land bridge, these early pioneers entered an entirely new world, encountering unfamiliar animals, climates, and landscapes. Over time, they spread across the continents, developing unique cultures and innovations that adapted to the diverse environments of North and South America. The Ice Ages didn't just drive physical migrations, they also transformed how humans thought, organized, and innovated. The challenges of surviving harsh climates pushed groups to develop more sophisticated tools, like spear throwers and later, the bow and arrow, which allowed for more efficient hunting. It also fostered social cohesion. Working together was often the only way to survive. This likely strengthened social bonds, language development, and the ability to share knowledge across generations. One fascinating legacy of these migrations is the way they influenced genetic diversity. As groups split, merged, and moved, they carried distinct genetic markers that scientists can trace today. For example, DNA analysis has revealed that populations like the Villabruna cluster, which lived in Italy around 14,000 years ago, were among the first Europeans to show genetic links to the Near East. This points to a period of increased mobility and cultural exchange as the Ice Age ended and humans began exploring and expanding into new regions. These movements and exchanges also had a profound impact on human diets. The end of the Ice Age saw the gradual shift from hunting megafauna like mammoths and woolly rhinoceroses to smaller game, fish, and foraged plants. This diversification in diet was a crucial step toward the agricultural revolution that would emerge thousands of years later. The Ice Age migrations were not just about survival, they were about exploration, adaptation, and the relentless human drive to push boundaries. They laid the groundwork for the incredible diversity of cultures and societies we see today, proving that even in the face of immense challenges, humanity's capacity for ingenuity and resilience is boundless. The genetic tapestry of modern humans holds traces of a tumultuous past shaped by the Ice Ages. These frozen epochs didn't just alter landscapes, they left an indelible mark on our DNA, influencing everything from physical traits to our immune systems. Today, by analyzing the genetic code of ancient and modern humans, scientists are piecing together how these eras of ice and migration shaped who we are. One of the most striking discoveries is how the Ice Ages impacted Neanderthal DNA in modern humans. When anatomically modern humans first ventured into Europe and Asia around 45,000 years ago, they encountered Neanderthals, who had lived there for hundreds of thousands of years. These encounters weren't just territorial, they were also intimate. Evidence shows that interbreeding occurred, leaving modern humans with around 2% Neanderthal DNA in their genomes. But here's where it gets fascinating. Not all Neanderthal DNA survived. Over the millennia, much of it was weeded out by natural selection. Scientists believe this is because some Neanderthal genetic variants may have been harmful, potentially linked to traits that were disadvantageous in the new environments humans were adapting to. What remains, however, are the fragments that provided some advantage, genes linked to immunity, skin pigmentation, and even adaptations to cold climates. For example, certain Neanderthal genes are associated with how our immune systems respond to infections. These ancient fragments may have helped early humans survive diseases they encountered in Ice Age Europe and Asia. Similarly, genes influencing skin and hair pigmentation, key to adapting to varying levels of sunlight in different regions, also bear Neanderthal signatures. But the story of Ice Age genetics doesn't end with Neanderthals. Around 14,000 years ago, as the ice sheets began to retreat, genetic studies show that a new wave of genetic influence entered Europe from the Near East and the Caucasus. These populations likely carried genetic traits that were beneficial in warmer climates, such as lighter skin, which would have helped with vitamin D production in environments with less ultraviolet light. This mixing of populations during and after the Ice Ages contributed to the diversity we see in modern human genetics. For instance, studies of ancient DNA have revealed that blue eyes began spreading around 14,000 years ago, while pale skin only became widespread around 7,000 years ago. These traits likely emerged as humans adapted to changing climates and diets, particularly with the advent of farming. What's even more intriguing is how ancient migration patterns, dictated by the Ice Ages, created genetic clusters that scientists can still identify today. Groups like the Gravettians, Magdalenians, and Villebruner cluster weren't just cultural designations, they were genetic lineages that left their mark on modern populations. The Gravettians, who lived between 34,000 and 26,000 years ago, spread across much of Europe during one of the coldest periods of the Ice Age. Their genetic signature dominated the continent for thousands of years, but they were eventually replaced by other groups, like the Magdalenians, who expanded as the ice sheets retreated. The Magdalenians, in turn, were closely related to the Villebruner cluster, a genetic group that emerged during the warming period around 14,000 years ago. This Villebruner cluster is particularly significant because it shows the first clear genetic links between Europeans and populations from the Near East. This connection aligns with archaeological evidence of increased cultural exchange and migration during the warming period, as humans began exploring new territories and encountering different groups. These genetic shifts also highlight how adaptable humans were during the Ice Ages. When faced with changing environments, they didn't just survive, they thrived, finding ways to merge cultures, share innovations, and adapt biologically to new challenges. This adaptability is evident in how humans spread to new regions, from Siberia to the Americas, during the last Ice Age. The Ice Ages also shaped our genetic diversity in subtler ways. For example, scientists have identified genetic markers linked to cold tolerance, which are more common in populations from historically colder regions. Similarly, some genes associated with fat metabolism and energy storage may have been advantageous during periods of food scarcity, a critical survival trait in Ice Age environments. Perhaps most importantly, the genetic legacy of the Ice Ages reminds us of the interconnectedness of all humans. The migrations, interbreeding, and cultural exchanges that occurred during these frozen millennia created the foundation for the global diversity we see today. Every strand of our DNA carries echoes of these ancient struggles and triumphs, a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of our ancestors. As we continue to study ancient DNA, new discoveries will undoubtedly emerge, shedding light on the intricate dance between humans and the Ice Ages. These insights not only deepen our understanding of the past but also provide clues to how we might adapt to future challenges, proving once again that our genetic story is one of survival, innovation, and constant evolution. Throughout history, the dance between climate and genetics has shaped life on Earth. The Ice Age offers perhaps the most vivid example of how environmental pressures can leave a lasting legacy in the genetic blueprint of species, including humans. These ancient interactions between climate and genetics aren't just a window into the past. They offer invaluable lessons for understanding our present and future. During the Ice Age, fluctuating temperatures and massive glacier created a world in flux. Entire regions became uninhabitable as ice sheets advanced, forcing human populations to migrate, adapt, or perish. These migrations didn't just reshape the map, they rewrote the genetic code. Survival in extreme conditions meant that certain genetic traits were favored, while others were left behind. Take, for instance, the adaptations to cold climates. Populations that lived in glacial environments likely developed genetic traits that enhanced their ability to retain heat, such as compact body shapes or changes in fat storage mechanisms. These traits, encoded in their DNA, would have given them a crucial edge in frigid conditions. But adaptation wasn't solely about surviving the cold. It was also about finding ways to thrive in environments where resources were scarce. Ice Age humans had to contend with long winters and limited food supplies, which placed immense pressure on their metabolic systems. Genetic studies suggest that certain adaptations, such as efficient energy storage, may have evolved during this time to help populations survive periods of scarcity. The interplay between climate and genetics wasn't limited to physical traits. It also influenced behavior and culture, which are deeply intertwined with human survival. For instance, the ability to innovate, whether by creating better tools, developing clothing, or finding ways to hunt large Ice Age animals, was as much a product of cultural evolution as it was of genetic adaptability. Some researchers even speculate that genes linked to cognitive functions may have played a role in humanity's ability to adapt and thrive during these challenging times. As the glacier retreated around 14,000 years ago, the warming climate brought new challenges and opportunities. Forests expanded, animals migrated, and humans followed suit, exploring new territories and encountering different groups. These encounters sparked waves of genetic mixing, further diversifying the human gene pool. This genetic exchange not only introduced new traits but also reinforced humanity's ability to adapt to a variety of climates and environments. The influence of Ice Age climates on genetics wasn't confined to humans. Other species that shared the planet with us also adapted in fascinating ways. Animals like woolly mammoths developed thick fur and fat layers to survive the cold, while species in temperate zones evolved strategies to deal with seasonal changes in food availability. Even plants adapted, with some developing cold-resistant traits that allowed them to survive in glacial conditions. These ancient examples highlight the powerful relationship between climate and genetics, one that continues to shape life today. In fact, the same genetic principles that helped Ice Age populations adapt are still at work as species, including humans, respond to modern climate change. Today, as global temperatures rise, we're seeing genetic shifts in real time. Species are migrating to cooler regions, just as they did during past warming periods, and genetic traits that help organisms cope with heat stress are becoming more important. But unlike in the Ice Age, humans now face a unique challenge. The pace of climate change is faster than ever before. This accelerated timeline means that genetic adaptation may not be able to keep up, putting entire ecosystems and human populations at risk. However, Understanding how genetics and climate interacted during the Ice Age provides valuable insights into how we can address these challenges. For example, conservation efforts can benefit from studying genetic diversity in species that survived past climate shifts, helping us identify traits that might enable them to survive today's changes. Similarly, understanding human genetic resilience during the Ice Age can inform public health strategies as we face new environmental pressures, such as the spread of tropical diseases to temperate regions. The Ice Age also underscores the importance of genetic diversity. During periods of rapid climate change, populations with greater genetic variation were better equipped to adapt and survive. This lesson is particularly relevant today, as habitat loss and other human activities are reducing genetic diversity in many species. Protecting and preserving this diversity isn't just about saving individual species, it's about safeguarding the resilience of ecosystems as a whole. In a sense, the story of the Ice Age is a story of survival against all odds, a testament to the power of adaptation and the intricate relationship between genetics and the environment. It reminds us that while we can't control the forces of nature, we can learn from them, drawing on the lessons of the past to navigate the uncertainties of the future. As we face our own era of climate challenges, the legacy of the Ice Age serves as both a warning and a guide. It's a reminder that resilience is built on diversity, adaptability, and the willingness to innovate. These principles aren't just encoded in our DNA. They are part of the human spirit, a legacy passed down from the Ice Age and one that continues to shape our story today. The story of the Ice Age is far more than an ancient tale of survival. It is a profound narrative etched into the very fabric of life on Earth. From the genetic footprints of early humans to the remarkable resilience of plants and animals, the Ice Age has left a legacy that continues to influence our world today. As we've journeyed through this fascinating history, we've uncovered the threads that connect us to those who lived tens of thousands of years ago. Their struggles against the cold, their migrations across vast, frozen landscapes, and their incredible capacity to adapt have shaped who we are, not just biologically, but culturally and socially. This forgotten genetic legacy of the Ice Age holds valuable lessons for us. It reminds us of the importance of diversity, the power of innovation, and the necessity of adaptability in the face of change. These qualities were key to survival then, and they are just as critical now, as we confront our own era of unprecedented environmental challenges. Yet, there is also hope to be found in this legacy. The Ice Age teaches us that life can endure, even under the most extreme conditions. It shows us that through collaboration, resilience, and a deep understanding of our natural world, we can not only survive but thrive. So, as we look to the future, let us carry the wisdom of the Ice Age with us. Let us remember that our genetic story is a shared one, connecting us not only to the past but to each other. Together, we have the tools to write the next chapter, one that honors the resilience of our ancestors while building a sustainable and thriving world for generations to come. Because the Ice Age wasn't just a test of survival, it was a testament to the enduring spirit of life. And that spirit lives on in each of us, urging us to rise to the challenges of our time and leave behind a legacy that is worthy of those who came before.